My name is Lauren Weston. I am the Executive Director of Acterra, Action for a Healthy Planet. I'm going to share some slides with you, and then I'm going to turn it over to our lovely panelists. Can I get a thumbs up if you can see my slides? Awesome. Okay, great. We are here tonight for mass mobility, fleets, and innovation. This is a panel discussion. We have some amazing hosts with us this evening, and we have Hillary as our moderator. Some of you might know she's a longtime Acterran supporter. She was on staff. She's been such a huge advocate for our work, and she's also in the EV space, and so we're really thrilled to have her and Dave Rubin and Bhavin Khatri and Kristen Slanina all joining us this evening. Now, our event moderator is Hillary Rupert. She is right now the lead for EV Charge Schools and Parks programs, which is really exciting and so aligned with what our work is here at Acterra. She's also an expert program manager with PG&E. So Hillary, I'm going to turn it over to you.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Lauren, for the introduction. And thank you for being a Zoom extraordinaire and getting us all up and running. So and I just want to say before we kick this off, thank you, Acterra, for putting on this lecture series. And thank you to our panelists for being here. And of course, our audience who was able to overcome some of the Zoom challenges and join us today. So as Lauren said, my name is Hillary Rupert, and I'm going to be the moderator for today's lecture. And I honestly can't think of a more exciting topic to discuss at this particular time, especially in the heart of Silicon Valley and the Bay Area, where we're surrounded by innovation. And we have such an incredible opportunity right now to shift our transportation patterns and shift our transportation infrastructure to create clean mobility, reduce greenhouse gas, and continue to engage in a solution to a lot of our climate change challenges. So here's a quick rundown of how today's panel is going to run. I'm going to kick this over to our panelists in just a moment, and they can give us their names and give us a little bit about their background and what they're doing. And then once we go through the quick round of intros, I'll ask each one of our panelists to share their presentations that they've prepared for you. And of course, we want to have audience engagement. So as we're going through this, if you want to type your questions into the chat, Lauren and I will be looking through the chat questions, and we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. And we'll close the panel off with one of my favorite things, which is a lightning round. So panelists, get ready. With that, we'll go in this order. Bhavin, Dave, and then Kristen. So let me hand it off to you, Bhavin.
Good evening, folks. Bhavin Khatri, and thanks for the introduction here. I'm the Zero Emission Program Manager at SFMTA. So my role is to take our agency to full fleet electrification as per the California Air Resources Board guideline. As per our own policy. So I am here to share my presentation. So I'm sure, are we doing an introduction one by one first? Okay, I think that would be it for me.
Great, thank you. Dave, you want to go next?
Sure, yeah, happy to. First of all, thanks to Lauren and to Hillary for great work here. So my name is Dave Rubin. I lead policy research for Cruise on our government affairs team. We're a fully electric, fully autonomous self-driving car company based in San Francisco with about 150 cars on the road right now in R&D phase, but pretty closely approaching commercialization in San Francisco and the broader Bay Area. Really excited to be able to speak with you all today about how we can intersect on the three topics that we're discussing, right? Mass mobility, innovation, and fleets. I think our technology and our future service really squarely answer those. So super excited to dive in with my fellow panelists and with the audience today on those topics.
Great, thanks, Dave. And then Kristen.
Great, happy to be here. So Kristen Sullivan, I am from the Detroit area. Right now, I am the Chief Innovation Officer of ParkMyFleet, which is all about what we're talking about, mobility hubs of the future, and how we help really shift the movement of goods and people cross country as we're starting to change from ICE gasoline engines over to electrification. And how do we make that much more efficient? And kind of concurrently to that, I am also the managing director of Charge Across America, which the whole vision is, how do we demystify electrification for people? So we are orchestrating, I'll call it an event, a 10-day event from New York to LA. So think Cannonball Run, but not with gasoline engines, but all with electric engines. And we're having driving teams and a professional filming company, production company. Really excited to bring this together. And as I said, it's about bringing the ecosystem together. We're having some key events at some of the key stops along the 10 days. So we have some great sponsors. So please check out our website. And if you're interested to talk to me more, would love to, because it is about showing people what is possible today. And you know what? Sure, there are some things that need to be improved, but we are very smart and very resourceful and very creative as a society. And we are going to figure this out, and we already are. Technology is exponential. So let's make change happen. And my whole mission is a positive message about what where we're moving towards, and how do we get people excited about this future. And how I look at it, it's about using the technology and resources to make all of us more efficient. So more efficient asset utilization and efficient use of our technologies and our national resources. So thanks.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. So as you can see, we have a very esteemed panel and experts in the field. So with that, Bhavin, let's hear, what are you working on up in San Francisco? What fleet transportation electrification projects do you have underway?
Yeah, if I could just share my presentation, that would be great. Let me see if I could do this. Okay, are you able to see my screen?
I can see it, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so what I want to talk about today is SFMTA's Zero Emission Fleet Transition Plan. So we've been at this at a very, very long time. We were talking about zero emission, or we were actually implementing zero emission fleet before it was even a cool thing to do. We have a trolley fleet, about 300 trolley buses, which are zero emission in true sense, meaning that not only they run by electricity, but the electricity provided to them comes from our Hesse plant, which is a hydroelectric plant. So here's a sort of a quick snapshot of what our citywide emission looks like. As you can see, transport makes up to 45% of the emission, and out of that, 4% is caused by public transit. And our muni fleet is very, very small portion of that. And that is because of some of the things we've already done and we continue to do. Now, my job is to, take care of this very small percent of the emission, but I'm sure other panelists would be very interested on how we could get this, the cars and trucks and things of that nature. But as they say, transit leads in this area, right? So we need to be the leader in that front, and we realize that, and that's what we're hoping to achieve with this. So I'm going to tell you about the pilot program that we're doing currently for our battery electric buses. We're buying buses from 4 different manufacturers. Actually, we'd like to purchase it from anybody that would sell it to us, and sort of run their buses in true service, in our revenue service, to see how they compare with our existing hybrid buses, how they compare with our trolley buses, how they compare with each other. And, we're taking a holistic approach to this. We're not just evaluating the technology. We're evaluating the bus manufacturer's ability to build the bus, to do it at scale, their customer service, their aftermarket support, the whole 9 yards. So that's what we want to do, because we really think that planning is very key to successful outcomes. So we're taking a measured approach. We're not the first one to the fleet electrification, but we think we're doing it the right way. So to that effect, we've already received some of our buses, and they're already being running in the testing environment. And we actually plan to start revenue service later this year, or this month actually. So far, the results are very promising. As you can tell, we have a lot of hills in San Francisco, and these buses have gone up the hills, and even the mileage, daily mileage, we ran some of these buses for 18 hours straight, and they all ran on a single charge, so which was very promising for us. So what are some of the goals for the pilot program? Like I mentioned before, yeah, we want to measure the performance. We want to see the reliability of these buses. So we want a real-time input from our operation and maintenance folks, how easy they're to work with as far as maintainability is concerned, how easy to drive with as well, right? There's a lot of new players that are coming into this field. Some have a lot of experience building buses or building transit vehicles. And so we want to make sure that we take that all into account. Here's a brief snapshot of our requirement. We want to be able to run 160 miles on a single charge with the bus fully loaded. We want to be able to charge the buses in 4 hours or less. And we want to be able to climb 23% grade, which pleased to report that they've all done that so far. So the other side of this is the charging infrastructure, which is a huge challenge, in my opinion, at least. That I think buses are ready, but this still needs lots of work. At least the industry is developing and the standardization is in place. But we need to sort of work together to make sure that this happens before the buses are delivered, right? We've seen stories where the buses have been delivered, but the charging infrastructure is not ready. So it's critical that we get this right. So for pilot program, what we're doing is we're partnering with ChargePoint to deliver the state-of-the-art modular charging system where one of these power block can, power up to 4 dispensers, and then you can send, split the power, or you can give all the power to one of the dispenser, but it just provides a lot more flexibility this way. And so we're going with a plug-in solution right now where the buses are going to be plugged in. But we think that with the space being such a big constraint in San Francisco, we need something better. So here's what we're planning to do for our charging infrastructure at scale for one of our newer facilities that we're building, which will be our first BEV ready facility to be ready by 2026. And we're going to go with the overhead infrastructure with the pantograph, where the pantograph comes down onto the bus and charges the bus. It automatically detects if the bus is parked underneath it. So this is what we're going to do for all of our facility going forward. What are some of the other things that we need to think about? So, we've thought about the charging infrastructure, we thought about the buses, but it's important how we operate the buses in the yard as well, right? So important the yard flow, how you maneuver the buses within the yard. It is not like a diesel buses where you just gas it up and park it and then go next day, right? So we need to think about some of that stuff. And then construction of the charging infrastructure as well. It's not like we have a bunch of spare facility where we can shut one of our facility down and say, oh, we're going to build it in 3 years and be ready. So really, we need to do this in phasing. So we're thinking about that 20% of the time. And then it's important for the like I said, the space constraint. So we're going to try to install all the equipment, including PG&E's equipment overhead, to see if we could do that to save some space. And the last thing we need to think about is operational and planning and staffing, right? There's a lot of impact of the staffing. The way we're going to operate buses is going to be different. How we maneuver around the yard, how we assign the routes, how we dispatch the vehicle will be different. And then there's a training aspect as well. We think we are in very good position because our mechanics and operators are trained on zero emission buses already. So that transition could be much easier for us, but that's something that we need to take into account. There's going to be new high voltage training and things of that nature. We're thinking about this. We're taking this holistic approach. We're very excited about where we're going with this, and we think that we will be able to meet California Air Resources Board guidelines of fully electrifying our fleet by 2040. And we're doing lots of work in the background to make that happen. So I think that's all I have for now, and I'd be happy to participate in Q&A session later. Thank you.
That's great, Bhavin. Thank you so much. I really like that you take a holistic approach for the charging, because, when you think through the process, we are looking at the acquisition and then building the infrastructure. Also have to think through operations, because electrification, the operations are different than when we're looking at operations from the traditional ICE or diesel operational lens. And then also that you're thinking about training and staff, because I know that that's something that can be a little challenging or a little overwhelming to folks who are used to working in more of the traditional internal combustion engine or diesel environment. So really, really excited to learn a bit more about what you're doing at SFMTA. So thank you for that. Dave, let's hear what's going on with Cruise. Love to see your presentation.
Sure. Let me go ahead and try to share my screen as well. Okay. You good to go there? Perfect.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Awesome. Great. I was chuckling a little bit as Bhavin was presenting, because so many of the issues that SFMTA and opportunities that you guys are facing and walking through right now, we are also doing. There's just a lot of work that really needs to be done, both for public and for private fleets. So I'm happy to walk through kind of where Cruise is at right now, some of the work that we've been doing in the fleet space, specifically around how our autonomous centrally managed fleet can really present some not only longer term opportunities, but opportunities today for our sustainability goals, as well as sort of our broader public policy goals around transportation and public health. So as I noted, I'm on the government affairs team for Cruise. For those of you who are less familiar, if you have not seen our cars in the city in San Francisco, we are a self-driving, fully electric car company. We were founded in 2013. And our goal is to provide a safer, more accessible, more affordable, and cleaner ride-sharing transportation option for the public, as well as a delivery option for the public. We're really founded around these three principles on the left here in orange: self-driving, zero emission, and shared. On the self-driving, I know that's not the focus of today's conversation, but it is worth, of course, mentioning the safety element. We really view the 38,000 deaths on the road just in last year in the United States as completely avoidable and unacceptable, and really one of the broader obvious issues that we have in the transportation space beyond the emissions component. And so we're committed to delivering a safer mile for the public, and that really drives us. But beyond that, and for the purposes of today's conversation, really our commitment to a zero emission fleet from jump, again, the entirety of our fleet today is fully electric, and into the future with our next generation Cruise Origin, which I'll touch on my last slide. But also something super exciting is that, and I'll touch on this as well, through our central management of our fleet, we're able to make fleet-wide energy procurement decisions, which allowed us to go 100% renewable in California, and soon for our operations in Arizona as well. And then lastly, again, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but we really view shared as the last major pillar that's needed to unlock some of the benefits of fleets at scale, to really reduce VMT on the roads, to reduce congestion, and to encourage the reduction of personal vehicle ownership. We really need to approach transportation from a shared lens, be that shared rides, be that a shared vehicle, anything that can really move the needle here for us. So diving a little bit deeper on those two topics, zero emission and shared, I wanted to kind of walk through some of the nuances here that we really view as possibly transformative for the transportation landscape, and how we view our own value add as Cruise when we think about launching our product and future service. So just to hammer this home, again, we're based on the Chevy Bolt today, in the future, the Cruise Origin, but our fleet exists solely to expand the public's access to cleaner transportation. And here's where we think we've got a really interesting value add. We're able to provide that service to the public, that optionality, regardless of whether you own an EV or regardless of whether you can access an EV charger conveniently. Because as a fleet owner and operator, we manage all those decisions and barriers for the public, which we view as really pretty cool here in this space. But to get us to this fully electric future, we're investing heavily in the charging infrastructure to get us there, both through private charging, sort of behind the fence, similar to how SFMTA, for example, does their charging, as well as exploring kind of hybrid partnerships with traditional charging partners like EVgo, ChargePoint, InCharge, whoever it may be, exploring ways that a centralized fleet like Cruise could, for example, go to a public charging lot during off-peak periods, perhaps in those overnight times that can really help drive up utilization for the chargers, and at the same time not lock out the public from also accessing those chargers if there is demand. And as I noted, we're in R&D phases right now, but just for a sense of scale, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We already own about 50% of all DC fast chargers in San Francisco. And as I noted, we're building a very large depot in the Bayview as well on Cesar Chavez Street. Yeah, that's in San Francisco. With eventually, I think, initial launch plans are somewhere around 50 DC fast chargers with the optionality to ramp up even further. Now, our fleet is centrally managed, and as I noted, that allows not just interesting driving opportunities for us, including more efficient routing of our vehicles that can reduce VMT, but also we have an incentive as a centrally managed and operated fleet to increase utilization of the chargers that we have. And again, we are pre-commercial, but our initial estimates are that while public chargers are somewhere around 15 to 20% utilization, that because they're on our balance sheet, we're incentivized to use them more. We could hit upwards of 70, 75% utilization from those chargers, which is just super exciting, especially when you think about the end goal, which is delivering as many cleaner miles as possible to the public. But I'm going to touch on this. What I think is really the greatest nugget for this conversation is our ability to purchase energy from a fleet-wide perspective, specifically our ability to not just go fully renewable, but to do so in a very creative way, which is a new program that we've launched called Farm to Fleet. So earlier this year, we announced a new initiative where Cruise has begun to source our renewable energy, specifically our renewable energy credits, directly to 2 farms in the Central Valley. You can see their logos here at the left, Sundale Vineyards and Moonlight Company. They are 2 fruit growers and a grape grower in the Central Valley, and Tulare and Reedley respectively, that have invested in their own solar panels and were looking for creative partnerships to start to sell their RECs in a meaningful way. And so after a couple of months of trying to find the right partners, we were lucky enough to get on the phone with both of these companies and saw an opportunity here, which was not only could we go fully renewable, but also do so in a way that created real connectivity from our autonomous electric vehicles in San Francisco to the solar panels at this vineyard and at this orchard in the Central Valley, hundreds of miles away. We thought that was really cool. And so to put a pretty fine point on it, every mile that we are now driving in San Francisco to test our vehicles, and in the future, once we commercialize, is going not only towards providing a cleaner transportation future, but is also putting money in the pockets of California farmers. And again, we're able to do that because we are centrally managed and we are able to directly dictate where we are buying our energy from. And that's a pretty powerful tool. Obviously, that's something that we're doing now, but as we look to the future, we've done some forecasting, and we're pretty excited about what the numbers could be if programs like Farm to Fleet are scaled up. By 2040, we estimate that all renewable ride hailing in California could offset as much as 13.5 million metric tons of CO2, which is about 3 million cars, gas-powered cars, that we would be taking off the road. And talking about the ancillary benefits, would generate about $100 million of revenue for farms like Sundale and Moonlight. So really powerful way to reimagine fleets simply by the way that you're buying the energy. But while, we mentioned things like 2040, and of course, anytime we talk about innovation, we're always thinking about years and years down the road, typically. I do want to mention some of the work that we're doing today. Starting in April of last year, right after the lockdowns really ramped up, crews saw an opportunity and a real issue going on in the city of San Francisco. We were approached by 2 local food banks, SF New Deal, as well as the San Francisco Marin Food Bank. And they were having tremendous issues getting food to food insecure families and households in San Francisco 7x7. And so we realized that this was actually an opportunity to really reimagine the way that our fleet could serve the public today. So starting in April of last year, we started doing deliveries to food insecure households across the city. And as of the end of September, we have delivered 1.8 million meals to date, over 80% of which have been in low income neighborhoods and zip codes. And then most importantly, or most interestingly for this conversation, is the fact that doing so in these renewable powered all electric vehicles has also allowed us to reduce 85 metric tons of CO2 that would have been emitted had these deliveries been done in gas powered cars. And then lastly, just real briefly, again, we're talking about transportation today, but into the future, we have announced the Cruise Origin. This was in January of last year. We will be going to market with our Chevy Bolt, which you've seen in these previous slides. But the Cruise Origin is really, from our perspective, a way to completely reimagine transportation. We've developed this vehicle in consultation and closely with General Motors, which is our majority shareholder, as well as Honda. And just this month as well announced that we would be coming out with a wheelchair accessible variant. You can see the mock-up here in the bottom left, as well as a modular cargo design. And it's going to be made in the United States, supporting over 2,000 union jobs in Michigan, as well as underpinning a multi-billion-dollar investment in General Motors' first fully electric factory, Factory Zero. So that finishes it up for me, and happy to pass it back to you, Hillary.
Wow, that's really exciting, Dave, what you're doing with Cruise. What I like about this are the partnerships that you're looking at and the collaboration, and you're also thinking about, what will it take to scale electrification. And another item that I found particularly interesting is that climate justice piece that you talked about with the farm to fleet, right? You're looking at ways to bring in communities that may traditionally have been left behind. And you're looking at connecting just different industries. So really exciting work. Again, I mean, we're in the heart of Silicon Valley in San Francisco, right? What incredible innovation. So thank you for that. And Kristin, I would love to hear about what you're doing. You have about 7 minutes for your presentation, if that gives you enough time.
Great. So yeah, as I mentioned in my intro, so part of ParkMyFleet as well as the Charge Across America. And it really is about how do we start progressing this as a society as a whole. So appreciate you being here. And there's so many headline news, right? There is tons of money being invested into this. It seems like every week you hear about more investments from the OEMs. You hear about all the initiatives that are happening with the government and what the lawmakers are doing. And, startups that are having really creative ways, like Ample, for example, doing battery swapping. So I think it's really exciting to keep apprised of all the innovation and creativity that's happening in this space, as well as the huge influx of money that's just creating such change. And so let me tell you a little bit more about ParkMyFleet. It actually started and originated during COVID. There was a lot of, what I'll call distressed land that wasn't being used. And it was like, wow, here's a great opportunity. When something changes, there's always a door opening. So here's a great opportunity to really help companies as they transition from ICE fleets to EVs. So it's about, safe parking solutions. How do you do managed fleets? charging, so on-site power generation for electric vehicles at scale. So not only on the fleet side, but there's a public access side as well. Then there's first mile, last mile, mid-mile logistics for getting goods to people's homes, inventory management, and fleet logistics from a platform called Park.ai. And, you know, helping all of those networks, especially when you look at cross country, and then things such as, you know, restoring, reconditioning, cleaning, repairs, washing, vacuuming. So all of the basics. And so the whole goal is, how can it help mobility companies, fleet companies function with greater efficiency? That's the vision of the goal. And then, as I said, every like hub will have access for the public as well. And so when I look at the verticals, there's a huge amount of verticals. So when you think about it, like right now, the OEMs have a chip shortage. Where are they going to put these vehicles that are waiting for these chips, right? There's, as we said, that first mile, last mile, middle mile stuff. There's remarketing, general fleets, dealer digital auctions, truck parking, rental cars, rideshare, autonomous fleets, you know, the whole logistics and heavy machinery. So it's really extending through so many different verticals and so many different opportunities when you look at the land and how we help transition them. So as I mentioned in my intro, this kind of brought the whole ParkMyFleet, which is the platinum sponsor of the Charge Across America event, was to bring the EV revolution kind of into the forefront, into the main public. What's interesting is that this year is my 30th anniversary of when I was co-captain and driver of the MIT solar car team. And we did 3 races, won them, and that's actually what brought me into automotive 30 years ago when I graduated with my bachelor's and master's in mechanical engineering. And so this is really coming like from my personal heart space right now. And I'm really honored to be part of this, because as I kind of look back into 30 years ago and the solar car race and what we were doing, it was about strategic decision-making. We had different legs every day, and we had to consciously strategize at what meter reading I'd stop, because, you know, looking at the sun that day and knowing you'd have to charge only with the sun, and, you know, you could take time off your time at the end of that leg, but it's all strategy. And of course, it depended upon how efficient we made our vehicle and our motor controller strategy. So really fun for me to bring sponsors, the ecosystem together. As I said, we are filming this and going from New York to LA. So we're working with Revel and using their, you know, their facility in Brooklyn to start the race. We have a big event on November 1st at the American Center for Mobility in Michigan, which is all about autonomous connected electric testing, and DTE Energy is a part of that as well. And we're having that ecosystem. And of course, there's so much here in Detroit, which is where I'm living. And then we have some smaller events as we go through the middle America country, because we want to highlight, you know, small town USA and the beauty of America and what it has to offer. And then we have another big sponsor event with 6 different companies at the Las Vegas Speedway, talking all about, you know, kind of like that whole thing. Vegas is all about the mining and the lithium. And so we have, you know, American Battery, Comstack Mining, and Panasonic, Lithium America, and Ioneer. And it's just really going to be an exciting thing as we have the government, we have the senator as well as the governor that's going to be speaking at that event. And then we have a host in Westlake Autoscape at the end near LA. And so just very excited to just let people understand what is possible today, how to really navigate their phones to understand the charging and their decisions that they make, and how to, because it's a different headset than with gasoline, but it doesn't have to be difficult, right? And so that's what we want to characterize. And so this is kind of the map. We have that little like blurb going back up into Detroit a little bit, but the map across country. And we have a great sponsor, a startup that has already plugged into the APIs of the charging infrastructure. And what we want to do is after the race, have people actually download the QR code, and it will show them and walk them step by step about, okay, here's the leg and here's where you charge at this park charging station. And then while you're charging there, you can like have lunch here, and it kind of walks them through to make it really easy. So as I said, would love to talk with anyone who's interested about this. We have certainly our website for ParkMyFleet.com, as well as Charge Across America. And we have, basically we're on all of the social media channels as well. I didn't put all of them down, but there's my personal email address, and would love to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Kristen, thank you so much. I remember first talking with you a couple of weeks ago and hearing about the Charge Across America race. And I thought, wow, this is so exciting. This is exactly what we need to continue pushing the
a fun way to bring America together, right?
That's right, right? A car race. So this is so exciting. I'm glad to see the link up there. So I assume that the panel or the folks can like click on the link and they could follow along
Absolutely.
the race. And
yeah, we are actually having social media coverage. We're having a person dedicated to that who will be all 10 days, who will be doing live footage, in addition to the production company who's going to be putting the documentary together, but that's after the race. So absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So I guess we'll look for that on Netflix then.
Perfect.
Yes. Okay, perfect.
Thanks, Hillary.
Yeah, thank you. And one other item I wanted to touch on really quickly is that I'm glad that you mentioned the mining and the sourcing of the materials and the minerals. That's something that I know I get asked a lot about, and it's something that we also should be thinking about when we think about just the entire life cycle of batteries and just the charging
and how to do it sustainably. Like I talked with some of those sponsors, and I was totally impressed with their sustainability efforts and really thinking through and wanting to like honor the earth as they're doing this. So yeah, it's fabulous. Yeah, good messaging.
Yeah, really exciting stuff. So I know we got off to a late start today, and we have about 7 minutes left in our presentation. I know that our panelists have been answering questions along the way, so thank you very much for just engaging in chat in the dialogue box. I want to ask a question. So you know, I'm hearing about all of this innovation and this exciting work, and we're talking about scale, and we're talking about Cruise owning 50% of the DC fast chargers in San Francisco and what SFMTA is doing. Bhavin, let me ask you this. Do you think that we're at the tipping point for transportation electrification? Yes or no, and why or why not?
I think so. I think the opportunities are just, in the last 2 years, we've spoken to so many firms and companies that are ready to solve the challenges, some of the challenges that we're facing. So, for example, the charging infrastructure challenges that we're facing. There are so many companies that are ready to do this at turnkey solution that can provide this service as a service as a charging, or as they'll build the infrastructure for you to take that headache from you. Because one thing that, I mean, public transit agency doesn't do is deliver capital projects of scale, you know, in the timeline that you really need. So we're going to really rely on some of these partners to help with this. So I think we're ready, and we're you know, it's the vehicles. I think I have no doubt the vehicles are ready. I think the next challenge is the charging infrastructure, but we're certainly getting there. There's lots of work needs to be done. Don't get me wrong. There's lots of challenges. I think biggest challenge is getting funding for it, which you know, we're getting there. But as a public transit agency, we have a lot of funds available to purchase buses, but there's nothing in it for charging infrastructure. At least we haven't gotten to that point. We're slowly getting there. So I think we're excited.
Yeah, I agree on the funding front. Dave, what do you think? Are we at the tipping point for transportation electrification?
Great question. I think my views really align with Bhavin on this, but I think it is going to depend on whether you're looking at it more generally especially from like a personal vehicle perspective or from the fleet perspective. And I think it's really, really interesting. I'll talk about the personal vehicle one just briefly. I think we are there for certain communities. But the reality is that despite lowering costs in EVs, that chip shortages and the remaining relative high cost in EVs, still not reaching perfect parity with ICE or cheaper than ICE vehicles, makes these vehicles, unaffordable for low income and certain disadvantaged communities across our cities and states. And that's a challenge, especially when we're thinking about equitable access to cleaner transportation. From a fleet perspective, I think things have actually changed much more quickly in that space in the last year and a half than we've actually seen in the personal vehicle space. As Bhavin noted, I think there's still some challenges, specifically around charging infrastructure funding, especially for fleets. But there's such a major need now with some of the mandates and executive orders that we're seeing in California and elsewhere, really requiring a turnover of public and private fleets, that the need is being answered by the private sector with creative charging solutions, which we're really excited to see.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you on the accessibility challenge and the affordability challenge, especially, as we continue on this electrification journey. It's critical that we bring all of the communities along with us. So I think, yes, some segments we're seeing the tipping point for sure, and other segments, we've got to catch up and make sure that we get there. Kristin, what about you? What do you think? Are we at the tipping point?
You know what? I think so. I like to look at history as kind of a guideline. And, I remember some pictures back like early 1900s of New York City, Fifth Avenue, where you see one vehicle and all the rest horse and carriage. And then like a few years later, you get a quote from all these famous people who said, yep, the horse and carriage will never be replaced by the automobile, right? And then like 10 years later, you see a picture of Fifth Avenue, New York, same place, and it flipped, right? There's one horse and carriage and all the rest automotive cars, right? And so I really do think we are starting to converge to that tipping point. And, is it this year? No, not necessarily. But when you get the technology, when it really is better than what it was before, then you get that flip. And so we are moving towards that. And as I said, history can teach us a lot. And I always look back to history to help us with the future.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I think there are a lot of levers that we can pull. We have the technology, we have the policy, we have, the financing mechanisms. We're starting to see an influx of proposals at the state level for electrification funding and just green infrastructure and green jobs, which is all really exciting. I personally think here in the Bay Area, we're at the tipping point. And to Bhavin's point, we really need to focus on the infrastructure, and Dave's point as well. The infrastructure is absolutely critical. We cannot have a fleet and personal vehicles that are electrified that don't have the ability to charge.
And you know what, though, Hillary, what Dave said is true, though, is that there's a lot of innovation and creative solutions. And so it might not just be a one size fit all, right? You could have that battery swapping like with Ample. You can have not only at home or on-site charging, you can have public infrastructure, but there's also services now that, I've talked with a company that gets all their energy from solar, and they will actually, for a flat rate per month of $25, charge wherever you want, right? I mean, how valuable is that when the average American spends $250 a month on gas? So I think it could be, let's say 4 or 5 different alternatives in each area. And depending upon your personal needs, you might use one or several of them, depending on your situation and where you're at. So.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. You're absolutely right. It is not a one-size-fits-all solution. We have to look at this through a multi-dimensional lens and help folks understand, what options are available to them so that they can make the best choices for themselves.
And just be aware of that these choices exist.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely agree. Goodness, I wish we had more time. So we are at 5:30. I want to go just a couple of minutes over. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat that haven't already been answered. So panelists, in 10 words or less, I want you to tell us how do you see the transportation electrification ecosystem in 2030? 10 words or less. Bhavin, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, so how do I see transportation electrification in 2030? I think we have a lot of challenges ahead, but there's nothing that I'm seeing that we can't overcome. So I think we'll be there. We will have some lessons learned along the way. We will have some setbacks, but I am confident that we will be there.
I like that. I'm going to take "we will be there" as your 10 words or less, Bhavin. Thank you. Dave, what about you?
Hopefully I'll meet the 10 or less here. All right. Ripe, diverse, and raring to go. What's that? It's 6? You count that right? Did I pass my basic arithmetic?
I think so, Dave.
Okay.
That's really fantastic. And then Kristin, what about you?
Different than today. There you go.
Different than today. Fantastic. So with that, folks, I'm sorry that we didn't have more time to engage today, but thank you so much for attending. Thank you to our panelists. I honestly could keep talking with all of you for the next couple of hours or so. This was really wonderful. And again, Acterra, thank you for inviting me to serve as moderator today. And I see the slide up here. So thank you to Acterra's series underwriters, Marion Clinton Gilliland and Armand and Elaine Nurkermans. With that, Lauren, I'm going to hand this back over to you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you guys very much. And thank you for sticking with us. Yes, the Newcomans and the Gillerlands are longtime supporters of us. Thank you so much. Eliane, we'll appreciate you attempting her name the way you did. So thank you so much. And also to our series sponsors, Bay Area Air Quality Management District and the Foster. When we were holding these in person, the Foster would house us so that we could all be in person. And we're hoping again one day to do that. It would cut down on technological problems for sure. Thank you guys so much for your time. It was such an honor to be here with you this evening. Thank you all to our attendees for being patient and for sticking this out. It was a pleasure, and have a great rest of your Wednesday.